Hey, read through the word. Today is October 25th, and today's lesson is called In His Image. I'm going a different route with a verse that you probably hear a lot, or verses. I am in Mark chapter 12, verses 13 through 17. It says, Later the leaders sent some Pharisees and supporters of Herod to trap Jesus into saying something for which he could be arrested. Teacher, they said, we know how honest you are. You are impartial and you don't play favorites. You teach the way of God truthfully. Now tell us, is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or shouldn't we? They're trying to set him up. Jesus saw through their hypocrisy and he said, why are you trying to trap me? Show me a Roman coin and I'll tell you. And when they handed it to him, he asked, whose picture and title are stamped on it? Caesar's, they replied. Well then, Jesus said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God. And his reply completely amazed him. All right, and then you see that too, that Matthew and Luke both record this as well. All right. This really wasn't about taxes. The Pharisees, being Pharisees, were trying to get legalistic and trying to set him up because really, if he said, no, you're not supposed to pay your taxes, then they could take him to the government and say, hey, he's trying to lead an insurrection. They're not, he's telling people not to obey the law. And then, or if he says, then yes, you are supposed to pay taxes, then they're going to say, oh, see, he's telling us that the Roman government's more important than God. And so they were trying to set him up. And he saw through it. But I think that when we hear this, we always think, good old King James, render unto Caesar what is Caesar and render unto God what is God's. And we're like, okay, that means we're supposed to pay our taxes and all that. Now, that's true. That's true. Go read Romans 13. But it goes a lot deeper than that. Because what he's saying is, whose image is on the coin? And, that's a whole discussion of Roman coins and what they meant, and trying to see Caesar as God and all of that. And we could have this whole Augustus Caesar discussion. But it's really about us. And he's saying, because in that, it's the unasked question. Because he says, whose image is on the coin? And then he answers the question. It's like not a rhetorical question, because he doesn't ask the question. It's the unasked question that's supposed to, because the people are amazed because they understood what Jesus just said. Because what he just said to them was, whose image is imprinted upon you? This goes a whole lot deeper than paying your taxes. Whose image are you made in? Then if you're to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that's his coin. Render unto God what is God's. You are God's. His image is pressed upon you. Then everything you say, everything you do, everything you think, everything belongs to God because you are made in his image. Now, I talk a lot with my kids at my school. I would say because the thing they deal with the most, and I'm teaching at a private Christian school, but my students are impacted by culture. They have friends that they used to go to school with. They have this idea that is in our world now that identity is fluid, and that if whatever you want to claim to be today, you can be. That there's no such thing as a true identity. So I have lots of discussions about how our identity is found in Christ. If you're looking for identity anywhere else outside of that, you will be greatly disappointed. I tell them all the time, because they know my husband, because he's our campus safety director now. And listen, I love my husband. We will be married 30 years in February. And there is no greater man. And he loves those kids, and they love him. And I said, y'all, if I found my identity in my marriage to him, here's the truth of this. We don't live forever. I said, what if Mr. Sandy's not around? Who am I then? I said, if I find my identity in my children, if I find my identity as a teacher here at Read Through the Word, what happens when things change? That you have to find your identity in Christ. Who does Christ say we are? Now, we could have this really, really long discussion about the identity, what it means to be made in the image of God, and how that image is marred by the fall. And what the gospel does is the gospel enables us to get right with God. And that understanding our identity in Christ, what it means to be redeemed. That it is, in Romans 8:29 says this, those who he foreknew, he predestined to be conformed to the image of God. What were we predestined to do? Those who are saved, those who have been called, are predestined. Predestined to what? To be conformed to the image. To be conformed to the image of Christ. So, a deeper point, there's beyond talking theology and predestination, what are we predestined for? To be conformed into the image of Christ. God aims to restore us to the place where we can bear his image righteously, wisely, lovingly, and mercifully. Because those are, as we do, that's what it means that the gospel is able to restore, to redeem us. And so to understand, to trust Christ as those who are redeemed, what does it mean to bear the image of Christ, to claim his identity, to trust Christ with your identity, that you are who he says you are. You're not who the world says you are, and you're not what your feelings and emotions say for the day. This is my talk with my kids. So my goal is by the time you graduate my classes, that you will no longer believe what the world says about you and what your feelings say about you. You're going to believe what the word says about you. Because here's a list of things that we are, those of us who have been redeemed, find our identity in Christ. What does it say? That we have right to be called the child of God, John 1:12. That by abiding in Christ we will bear much fruit, John 15:5. That we are free from spiritual condemnation, Romans 8:1. That we are heirs with Christ of whatever God has to give, Romans 8:16 and 17. That we are one spirit with Christ, 1 Corinthians 6:17. That we are able to glorify God with our bodies. Our bodies belong to him. We do what he says. What he says about our bodies is true. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. We are a new creation. We are no longer what we were. We are not what the world says we are. We are who Christ says we are. 2 Corinthians 5:17. We have become God's kind of righteous. 2 Corinthians 5:21. Christ lives in me. Galatians 2:20. I've been blessed with every spiritual blessing. Ephesians 1:3. Man, we are just everything Ephesians says we are. We are holy and blameless before God, Ephesians 1:4. We are rooted in Christ and built up in Him, Colossians 2:7. We've been filled with Christ, in whom all authority resides, Colossians 2:10. We do not need to fear, because we have the capacity for power, love, and self-control, 2 Timothy 1:7. We are a recipient of grace and mercy in our hour of need, Hebrews 4:16. We have escaped the bondage to corruption that comes through sinful desire, 2 Peter 1:4. And evil cannot touch us, 1 John 5:18. That's just dipping our toe in the water, but what it means to be image bearers, what it means to find our identity in Christ. That is who we are made to be. And through that, everything will be done to the glory of God our Father. That's what we were made for. And through the gospel, we were able to be redeemed. And we are able to continue on that, to glorify God in everything we say and do. It is not sometime down the road. It begins from the moment of salvation that we are redeemed. We are who God says we are. We study the scriptures to see who He is, because we're made in His image, and what it means to be a child of God. We reflect Him to the world around us. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.